The question answered if you're on the free conference call link that we are simulcasting on, because we only have one moderator, and so they're looking at the free conference call comment. We're going to wait just a couple minutes while we're waiting for people to sign on, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Chuck Skewes of Ullman Sales here in San Diego, and I also do Pacific Northwest and Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I race to Mexico at least 3 times a year. I usually do a Cabo race, Puerto Vallarta race, the Ensenada race, and I also cruise to Mexico. I've done 5 Baja. I've done some other cruising to Mexico, and I spend most of my time out on the water. I actually get to sail more miles a year than I drive my car. So that's a brief about me doing this presentation. So we're going to get started here. I get the question all the time, is it safe cruising in Mexico? Well, it's clearly safe. It's, sorry about that. This is a map of all the pirate areas in the world. And I know it's kind of a cryptic map, but if you look at the far left of the screen, that's Mexico. And if we go in close, this is 2019. This is data from the IMD. And there was only one attempted piracy in Mexico, and it was right on the Guatemalan border. It was a pontoon boat, a maintenance boat of some sort, and they reported that their ship's stores and property were stolen. That type of crime happens here in San Diego. It happens in San Francisco. It happens in Seattle. It happens in Vancouver, BC. It happens in Miami. It isn't any more dangerous. Now, that being said, there are very poor people in Mexico. You still lock your dinghy and you still lock your boat. This year, there's possibly even more poor people in Mexico because the virus shut down a lot of industries, and these people live paycheck to paycheck. And so, as you can see, there isn't a lot of danger for piracy. And I'll get into a couple other things here about piracy. This was off of the State Department website, that there was no violent attacks of yachts reported in Mexico over the last year, although there have been some unresolved accounts down south in the southern border near Guatemala. So that's the same type of thing that you're going to have just about anywhere you go, especially denser cities or poor areas. If you went to any poor area in the United States or Canada, you're going to have the same thing. So in a sense, Mexico is a very safe cruising destination, and it's beautiful. So it's a good place to go. Don't worry. There's a lot of things not to worry about. We talk about violent deaths. I flew from Mexico to sorry, we got muted there. So let me go forward a little bit. I don't know. I got to touch the screen. Okay, so real worries in Mexico. Sorry about that delay. Real worries in Mexico. The thing that we worry about is battery life, charging. That is the #1 problem you're going to have in Mexico. Most of the time you're not going to be in a dock. Sun. It's hot. It's sunny. It's sunny in the winter. It's really sunny in the summer. It's sunny. So shade is a big deal. And paperwork. Paperwork is actually a true, real issue in Mexico. If you don't go down with a Baja, your first stop is usually Ensenada, because you're not supposed to make a stop at any of the ports down the coast until you've cleared into the country. And the only first place you can do that is in Ensenada. And if you're only going to be there just to clear in and clear out, I'll give you a little hint. It's about 15 miles into the bay and 15 miles out. So that's a 30-mile travel to go in and out of the bay in the same day. Baja Naval is probably the easiest, and they can help you. They don't charge. I believe the going rate for any of the paperwork people is about $70, and they'll walk you over to the immigration. You'll get it all taken care of, and you'll be out of there. Now, you can, if you go down with the HaHa, you can check in. You can wait to check in until you're in Cabo. They have kind of a special little arrangement that they have, and if you decide to sail straight down, I don't recommend it. It's quite a long sail, 800 miles almost, into Cabo, or 1,000 miles to Puerto Vallarta, or 900 miles to Mazatlan. You're going to have some issues. You're not going to have any issues. The difference is if you check in Cabo, you can't get your tip in Cabo. You can get your tip in La Paz, you can get your tip in Puerto Vallarta, but you can't get your tip in Cabo. So be a little cautious of that.
There's a lot of people having a hard time hearing because you're talking fast, like you're talking to yourself.
Okay, I am going to move a little closer to my microphone. You can speak up a little bit, and I'll hear you. Okay, so the other issue, the most important paperwork you need to have is your temporary import permit. And you have to have liability insurance, your boat registration, which is your documentation, and your bill of sale, your original bill of sale. You need that. Passports for everyone on board. You can get your visas when you get there. You don't have to get those ahead of time. And it's best if you have colored copies of all of them. Every marina is going to take copies of everything you have. That's just a given. I don't know where all this paperwork eventually ends up in Mexico, but they get a lot of paperwork, and it's everywhere. Now the charts, paper charts, Charlie's charts have been around for years, very detailed of all the stuff in Mexico. And electronic charts, have up-to-date electronic charts. CMAP is best. Navionics had a few issues, but I think they're better now. You don't want to use old, outdated charts because you'll see that the GPS location that you are is often on land, and it's not very good for coming in and out of the harbors. That's very important.
Tim Fox asked, he said, get your tip, question mark. What does that mean?
Tip, the tip is a temporary import permit, and what it does is there's a really high tax on luxury items in Mexico. And if you're in Mexico and you buy a boat, it's about a 60% tax. They don't want luxury items imported from out of Mexico. They want people to buy them in Mexico from Mexicans. So the tip is a temporary import permit. It's designed exactly for people like you. You pay $50, you get your boat into Mexico for 10 years without having to pay tax on it. And you can come and go all you want. It's a one-time fee every 10 years. It's a great deal. Some of the countries in the Caribbean have a $50 a week or $30 a day. So the Mexican system for that tip, what they call temporary import permit, is a super good deal. Oh, sorry, there. Oh, so, and I highly recommend having a very high quality dinghy. Now, when you're heading down the Baja coast, there's no place to go to a dock once you leave Ensenada. And so you have to do beach landings, even in the little towns like Turtle Bay and San Carlos, right up there inside Mag Bay. You have to do beach landings. And a lot of these places have surf and have rocks. It should have a hard bottom for beach landing. A soft bottom dinghy will get ripped apart. I recommend having a motor and the wheels for getting up the beach because it only takes about an 8-inch swell to flip your dinghy when you're in the shallow water. So being able to get it up and out of the way of the waves as rapidly as possible is really important. We see this every year when we go down the HaHa where we have 150 boats. When they try to beach the boat, there's always chaos. We roll a dinghy every year. So getting a good beachable dinghy and a beachable system in place is really important. And have a way to lock it to the boat and lock it to shore. Like I said, you're going to go to places that this is a year's income for somebody if they can sell that thing used. So just plan on locking that up and you'll be safe. Locking your motor up and the dinghy up. And we had some issues in Turtle Bay a couple different times. Water and food, there's lots of it. The food is amazing and cheap, and I emphasize the amazing. It's incredible good food, like the grocery store food. All that food is incredible down in Mexico. Water is easy to come by, and it's good. Several marinas have RO systems. I drink the water everywhere I go. If they say it's filtered in the restaurants, no matter what, I drink it. I don't have problems with the water. And anywhere there's people, you'll find food and water, no matter how small the village is. It's not, maybe you're not necessarily going to find the Costco or something like that, but you're going to be able to find food and water. So you don't have to over-provision when you leave San Diego heading south. You don't have to have a ton of food on the boat. If you're only going to Turtle Bay first, you can stock up in Turtle Bay. And then when you're going from Turtle Bay down to Cabo, you can get anything in Cabo. You can actually get Costco in Cabo. So don't overstock the boat. That stuff's just going to go bad, and the cans are going to rust, and you're going to have issues. And storage is number one problem on boats, especially when you're cruising. And the seasons. Now, the hurricane season is May 15th to November 30th. Most cruisers leave around November 1st, and a lot of insurance companies allow you to leave November 1st. Now, this last year, we did have a named storm come up and hit Cabo. It was mostly a rain event. There really wasn't that much wind to it, but what it did limit is where they would allow you to anchor. The port captains go out, and they don't allow you to stay anchored because of the risk of the boat getting washed on shore. And so moorage became a really high commodity. It was really hard to get good moorage. And, if you're in the cruising lifestyle, Cabo is not exactly where you want to stay anyway. That's more of a sport fishing place. It's got a lot of bars, a lot of loud music, and you're better off going around the corner to San Jose del Cabo. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, La Paz, north on the Baja side, gets cold starting in early December. So if you leave November 1st, shortly after you get to La Paz and north of La Paz, it gets cold. You're going to need some thermal wear. It gets down into towards 50 during the day, maybe even a little bit cooler, and that's all on the Baja side. It stays cooler on that side. The mainland side stays warmer, and the most common places to go in the summer are San Carlos, where people haul out up north, or I can't say it. Anyway, up on the north end of the Sea Cortez on the mainland side, or they go to Puerto Vallarta. Puerto Vallarta, insurance companies consider it a hurricane hole because the hurricanes don't go into the bay, apparently because of the mountains on the outside of it. So you can get insurance and keep your boat in Puerto Vallarta, and there's lots of moorage there in the off season. The summer season is the off season down there. So now that you get a little information, we're going to take off and start sailing down the coast. Like I said, now the first stop most likely is Ensenada. If you're not going down with the Baja Haha, Baja Haha is a great way to get down there. You get a lot of really good information, a lot of good support with the cruisers. But some people they want to be alone. So go to Ensenada. It's easy to find a slip most of the time in Ensenada. That's a little different right now because of this virus. A lot of boats that got stuck there that were going to go on further, so they've stayed there. But it has full facilities. It has a great boat yard. It has Uber, which is inexpensive in Mexico. And if you don't want to sail all the way to Cabo nonstop, it's a necessity unless you go with the Baja. And it's 7 to 12 hours from San Diego, depending on the wind. It's an easy day trip from San Diego.
There's a question from Eric W. Insurance providers or Mexican.
Eric W. asked about insurance providers. The one I know the most is Novamar Insurance. Novamar is located in several ports on the west coast of the United States, and they also in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And I know that their insurance is valid for everything in Mexico. The difference between Mexican insurance and U.S. insurance is when you have an issue in Mexico, if you damage somebody's boat and the authorities come, they hold you until you can prove that you're financially able to take care of the problem that was caused. They determine the fault, and then they take care of it, and they let you go, and then the two insurance companies talk. If you don't have insurance, they will take you to jail until your insurance company from the States comes down and does it, and that's not likely. So even if your insurance company says they cover you down in Mexico, read deeply into the policy because there is some issues with that. That's a very good question. So Ensenada, there's 3 marinas to choose from. There's Marina Corral, which is just a little bit out of town, very nice, deep. You can get in there with over 12 feet of draft. It's a little cautious getting in at the narrow entrance, and there is a rock in the middle of the way in there. Cruzport Marina, beautiful marina right by where the cruise ships come in, and Baja Naval. Now, Baja Naval doesn't have many slips, but they have great service. They can get your paperwork situated, and you can get boat worked on your boat at Baja Naval. Very, very qualified place. This is a sign. I'll let you read it to yourself. This is a sign that was on the head of the dock. They finally changed it in Ensenada, but it's about bringing solicitors, call girls, bar girls down to the boat. They don't want you to do it, but if you are, the marina is going to be the #1 determining factor who she is. So, in case you're traveling on that path, just beware.
Linda had a question. She wants to know which is better for paperwork, Baja Naval or Marina Corral?
So Linda had a question. What's better for paperwork? Is it Baja Naval or the Corral? I would say that they're both equal. The way it works is if you're at Baja Naval, you walk about a quarter mile to the facility, and in Ensenada, the facility is the bank and the immigrations and port captain are all in the same office. And if you go to the Corral, they put you in a van and take you over there free of charge. They're both absolutely perfect, but the issue is the Marina Corral is for marina tenants. So if you're gonna spend the night, you would go to Marina Corral and then do the transfer in the van over to the marina. All right. So after you leave Ensenada, you're going to head down more likely than not to Turtle Bay. And it's Bahia Tortuga for the people that don't know any Spanish. And it's a couple-day sail from Ensenada. It's 2 solid days from Ensenada on most boats. And when you get down to Turtle Bay, it's just past Cedros, which Cedros is this massive island. It's very tall. I believe it's 3,500 feet tall. And it's where 80% of the table salt comes from in the world. So if you go around behind it, there's barges that are coming to and from Guerrero Negro to Cedros, so just be aware of the commercial traffic there. And then once a day, a ship is leaving that island to go out to deliver salt to some other port. So you start getting into commercial traffic here, and you also start getting into lobster pots. There's quite a bit of lobster pot traffic in this area. Now, you can get anything you want in Turtle Bay. Look, they have a Costco and a Kmart and a Walmart, all in this little store that's 12 feet by 12 feet. It's a fishing village, and there is almost no paved road. There's one paved road. There's a beautiful baseball field, and everything else is very fishing village. And they have a couple of their stores are well stocked. Most of them are just marginally stocked. And so you have to be respectful. Don't buy them out of everything, because this is where the locals live off of it. But you can reprovision your boat for a good 10 days out of what you can get here in Turtle Bay. And the prices aren't unreasonable, considering that they drove a long way to go buy all that stuff and then a long way back in to get it. And the bay itself is quite big. And this is about where the water starts to turn warmer, where you can actually go swimming. I don't recommend swimming in Turtle Bay. It's a fishing village. The septic systems are not adequate for keeping the bay clean, but the temperature of the water is significantly warmer than it is between San Diego and there. So, and this is also where the fishing gets good. And you have to have a fishing license for everybody on the boat if you have fishing gear on the boat, whether you use it or not. Now, that being said, I've never been boarded on all my trips to Mexico, and I've only known one person that got boarded, and that was about 20 years ago coming home. So it's really rare to get boarded. There was all these rumors of boarding. It doesn't happen. It's just literally, I know people have done 30 trips down there and never been boarded. I get boarded by the U.S. Coast Guard all the time. I've never been boarded by the Mexican authorities. But it's their resource. Be respectful. Get the fishing license and follow their rules. There's no way you'll eat the limit. You can easily catch the limit, but you're not going to end up eating the limit because unless you had 30 people on board, you get a lot of fish. So now we head down, at least on the Ha-Ha, the next stop we do is a place called Bahia Santa Maria, and I recommend this stop for everybody. It's a really magical little bay that has about 15 miles of sand beach around it, great anchorage, super protected. There's a small little fishing fleet here. There isn't truly a village. It's these little huts that the fishermen stay in during the season, but there's not truly a village. So you can be completely by yourself. Even when you go with the ha-has, you can anchor 4 miles away from someone and be completely by yourself. It's magical. There's a surf break here. There's this river jetty that you come into, and there's mangroves that you can paddle through. The hiking is great there, and it's just a really wonderful stop. And you can stay there indefinitely. The one trick is that most of Baja Peninsula now is national park, and so legally you have to have the national park permit to go on to land here. There's no one there to enforce it, so they're not going to do it, but you're going to want that anyway for later on traveling around.
Bruce Cooper wants to know, can you barter with local fishermen with cigarettes or etc. for a fish or lobster?
Absolutely. I have a little slide coming up later. You can barter for fish with Coca-Cola, beer, money, bring small bills because they never have change, and other things you can barter. And you can barter for lobster. It's not legal. The only way to get lobster in Mexico as a gringo is if it's served to you on a plate in a restaurant. They don't allow non-nationals to fish for lobster. So just knowing that, be cautious. The fishermen are going to offer you lobster, and you can take it, and you're not going to get caught most likely, but just know that that's not really above board 100%. So once you leave Bahia Santa Maria, it's only a one-day trip to Cabo San Lucas. Cabo San Lucas is a place where you can get fuel, you can get any provision you want. They have a good boatyard there. You can get a lot of work done. If you're a cruiser, you can wreck your budget trying to stay at the marina there. It's possibly the most expensive marina on the west coast of North America. So I recommend probably heading around the corner to San Jose del Cabo. It's got more slips that are not for the commercial fishermen, not commercial fishermen, but the sport fishermen. Or going all the way up to La Paz, which is a big cruiser hangout. There's about 3 stops up on the way to La Paz too. And once you get around the corner, there's lots of protected anchorages, within 10 hours of Cabo. So this is kind of an overview of that last leg. That little point that comes out in the middle left of your screen is one day to Cabo San Lucas, and then just around the corner, only about 2 or 3 hours, is San Jose del Cabo, and then a day and a half travel up to La Paz. But there's Bahia de Muertos in between there. There's some great places to stop. There's some islands that I'll show you in just a little bit off of La Paz that you can go to if you have the National Park Pass. Everything's closed for that right now, but they're talking about reopening very soon. So there's San Jose del Cabo. And so now, once in Mexico, checking in within Mexico. So you've checked in Ensenada. Any port you go to, you need to notify the port captain. And sometimes pay a fee, sometimes not, but it's a small fee. And you have to notify them when you're going to leave. They want to know, and it's inconsistent throughout ports in Mexico because they're in a transition of transitioning from port captains to the Navy port captains. So just be respectful, be on the radio. The port captains are on channel 16. You can check in. They'll tell you whether you need to come into the office. But if you go into one of the ones that the guy wants to actually see your paperwork, you need to have the ZARPE, the exit papers from your previous port, or he will call that port and see if you exited that port. So just go ahead and exit those ports. When you're from an anchorage to an anchorage, you don't have to do this. Just when you're from actual villages or places with port captains. So now you're in the Sea of Cortez. This is the crown jewel of your first couple days down there. This is Espiritu Santo. This is the islands off of La Paz. And every one of those bays could anchor 40 boats. And you could spend weeks just going through all these different bays. and it's protected from most of the winds. If you're not, you go to the other side of the island. It's incredible, and it is just as blue and just as gorgeous up close as it is from the sky view. This is a must-see. And this is a national park. There's places you can go ashore. You have to have that permit I talked about, but you can also pick up shells. You can't pick up shells and bring them back to the boat, but the beachcombing is amazing in this place. It is really quite a jewel, and it's just unspoiled. It's really nice. So the best places to get work done in the Sea of Cortez is generally La Paz and Puerto Vallarta. You're going to run into English-speaking, trained people to work on your boat, and you're going to have chandlerlies in both places. You're going to have small boatyards, mechanics in both places. There's not a sailmaker to speak of in La Paz. There is in Puerto Vallarta, but Puerto Vallarta is easier to fly in and out of. So if you kept your boat there in the off season, it's 10 minutes to one marina, or 2 or 3 minutes to one marina, and 15 to another, and 25 to the next. So they're all very close in Puerto Vallarta. Do we have another question?
Yes. Eric wants to know, is the national park pass for the boat or per person?
The national park pass, Eric asked if the national park pass is for the boat or per person. It is per person, but it's really reasonable. If you buy the day pass, I believe it's $2. I think for $25 you buy the year pass. It's not a significant expense, and it does do a lot of good.
Bruce Cooper wants to know, who's the sailmaker in Puerto Vallarta?
Bruce Cooper's asking who the sailmaker is in Puerto Vallarta. You're looking at him. And there's another guy who does sail repair there, but Ullman Sails Loft there is the main loft.
Benjamin wants to know, what are the rules about bringing a dog?
Benjamin asked about the rules about bringing a dog. If you have a wellness certificate for the dog, like a good health certificate from your vet, you can bring the dog into Mexico. They're not that strict about it. I don't know about in some of the islands, because they're nature reserves, whether they would allow the dogs in. But on the Ha-Ha, there's probably 10 dogs. They come ashore all the time, and it's easy to bring a dog into Mexico. About the same rules as bringing one from somewhere else into the United States. And they don't always check either, but it's always good to have the paperwork. So now, this is Puerto Vallarta. This is a little chart of Puerto Vallarta to kind of give you a layout. Because we say Puerto Vallarta, but it's really Banderas Bay. Now, off to the right of this bay is the town of Puerto Vallarta. And there in the south side don't have any marinas. All the marinas are on the north side of here, and all the anchorages on the north side of here. There's a great anchorage up in La Cruz and out at Puenamita, which is out at the very top left tip there you see. And then there's La Cruz Marina would be next, and then La Cruz Anchorage, and then you come down and you go to Nuevo Vallarta, which has Paradise Village, a very well-run marina, and then you come down into Marina Vallarta, another well-run marina that is very close to the town, has restaurants around it, and they're all very friendly people, very easy to get a hold of. They fill up during the winter months, during the cruising months, so call them well in advance and reserve your spot if possible. So prices in Mexico. What is cheap? Food in the restaurants and the grocery stores, very cheap. Little cantinas or little grocery stores have about the same price as the large grocery stores. People don't have as readily great transportation down there. So the little stores charge about the same as the big grocery store. So you're not getting ripped off like you go into a 7-Eleven. Public transportation is super cheap down there. Healthcare, very cheap down there. Only issues I've ever heard about the healthcare is if you're in Cabo, there's some scams going on with some really high-end, expensive hospitals. But just go where you get a recommendation. We've had people go into the hospital in Puerto Vallarta, treated amazing at a fraction of the cost it is in the States, in brand new hospitals, and got treated great. Dental, super cheap in Mexico. Boat work for the most part is cheap, and labor is cheap. Now, What's not cheap in Mexico are marinas and slip fees. They are every bit that they are here in San Diego, and in Cabo they're more. The marinas, there's not a lot of marinas, so the marinas are very, very expensive. Boat equipment, because it's imported, is about 30% higher and not very available. Boatyards, the daily fee to have a boat out of the water in a boatyard in Mexico is more than it is in the States. The labor to get the work done is generally much cheaper, so the overall cost can be less depending on the size of your project, but know that it's not going to be a very inexpensive thing there. Rental cars, you have trouble finding a rental car for under $60 a day because of their insurance requirements. So rental cars are very expensive. Anything that's imported. If something that you really like in the U.S. is made in the U.S. or it's made in Canada or made in Italy, anything like that is going to be 30% higher. That's just the way it is in Mexico. So the basic do's and don'ts, or do nots in Mexico, is do wear professional clothes and shoes when going to public offices. When you go see a port captain or an immigration official, wear a button-down shirt, wear pants, and wear closed-toe shoes. Now, they're going to process your paperwork no matter what you're wearing. They're not going to not do your paperwork, but they won't have the respect for you. It's a cultural thing. They don't have respect for people that don't dress up to come see them. And so if there's a lineup, you're not going to get priority. And if your paperwork's not in order, you're not going to get any slack if you just go in there in flip-flops and shorts and a T-shirt. They just don't like that. I drink the water. I eat the food. You have to pay attention to the weather because the northerlies that blow, the northers that blow in the Sea of Cortez are pretty big, and so you need to know when they're coming. Use local services. Everything down there, you can get just about anything in most towns down there and use them. And keep your cash in small bills because they generally don't have change. Even if you're using pesos, they may not have change for the larger peso amounts. It's just they're very poor people. They don't necessarily get a lot of business. You know, there might be 10 taco carts in a row, and if you give them a 200 peso note, they might not have change. So just know that ahead of time. And don't show off things of wealth. Just like you're going through a poor area in the United States. Don't leave your boat unlocked. If you leave the opportunity, something's going to happen. And don't overtip. I know the people are poor, but if you overtip, they're going to expect it the next time and the next time and the next time. It's a cultural thing. You tip between 10 and 15% and up to 20%, but don't double the bill and because it's so cheap. That's just not necessarily a safe way or a good way to do it. It kind of makes you feel like you've got a lot of cash, and then that leads to problems later on. Don't act like you're a citizen with rights. If you get pulled over or you're dealing with an official and you don't agree with them, just work it out civilly. It's not the U.S. You don't have the same rights, and you're a visitor. Remember that. And in the same terms is don't trespass on other people's land. If you pull in and somebody says, hey, this is my land, you can walk on the beach, but you can't go up through their field. Respect that. That's really important to know. Regardless whether they're poor or not, that's their land. All right, boating protocol. I don't know why my slide is not advancing over here, but VHF channel 22 is the hailing channel at all the main ports in Mexico. So you get on 22, you call somebody, you change to another station. Same way you use channel 16 here. Use channel 16 to contact authorities, but channel 22 is your hailing channel. And almost every port, like if you go into La Paz and Mazatlan and Puerto Vallarta, they have a radio net in the morning. It's either 8 or 8:30, and that radio net, they call in, they ask for new arrivals, they ask for people leaving the bay, when people check in. They have news, weather, tides. They have the local going on. They're a great source of information, but verify the information. Some people love to just talk and they're not always 100% right. So You're going to get most of that information from those radio nets in those main ports.
Sorry for the late question. Bruce Cooper said, I've heard that if you're thinking of adding gear once you're down cruising, list it on your boat paperwork before you go, and some taxes can be avoided.
Yeah, it's a kind of it depends on who you're dealing with. But the question was, I've heard that if you were expecting to buy some gear in Mexico, add it on your tip, your temporary import permit paperwork, so that when you go down to the boat and you fly down and have that equipment, you have a copy of the tip and it lists that information on it, and you can avoid the 16% tax and the 18% tax. So the way it works is there's an import tax, generally for boating stuff is about 18%, and then there's a 16% sales tax. So that's why you see these prices at 30% or higher on items you buy in Mexico. They collect these taxes at the border, through customs, and they check your baggage, and if you don't have the receipts, they'll look up what the item is and find the real value. So, use caution and do it right. They're trying to stop smuggling there, and that is, in their mind, smuggling. So be careful. Like I was saying, most of the Baja coastal land is now national park, and a permit is required. They're opening up some new islands in the Sea of Cortez, and those are in that national park registry as well. The year passes are it's called a passport, the year pass thing. I believe it was $25. It was not very expensive. And the lobster is only legal to gringos if it's served on a plate in a restaurant, not bought off fishermen or caught yourself. But fish, you're going to get the opportunity to buy a lot of fish from fishermen. There's a little fishing village almost everywhere you can stop. So this was the latest update of entering and leaving in Mexico, and this is from the guys on the Panama Posse, where they send out a report of what's going on versus this coronavirus recently. Mexico has 13,842 cases confirmed and 1,300 deaths. So they're doing when you fly in, they're doing a temperature check on you, and if you have a higher temperature, you go in for additional screening. Several ports have restriction on movement. Now, Ensenada and Chiapas being the south end of Mexico, you can still check in and out of, but slips are getting very full in those areas. So check ahead, call one of the marinas I mentioned, and they'll tell you if they have availability. But right now, you can still travel around in Mexico. You just have to be a little cautious of where you're going. This is a daily changing deal. We don't know if it's going to lighten up soon, and things change slow here. They change even slower in Mexico. So just never be in a hurry in Mexico. Remember, mañana does not mean tomorrow. It just means not today. It means it's going to happen sometime, but not anytime soon. Well, that's our talk here, and thanks for everyone on Facebook Live and on our simulcast on freeconferencecall.com, and we have recorded this, so link will be available on Ullman Sales San Diego Facebook page tomorrow. You guys have a great evening, and I look forward to seeing you guys on Thursday. We're doing a racing seminar. If you're interested, it's the same time on Thursday, 6 p.m. on Thursday. We're going to talk about it's called Unlocking How to Keep Out of the Protest Room. It's basically ways to sail clean in tight situations, and things that you want to stay out of, what I call the cancer of the sport, the protest hearings. So that's coming this Thursday. Next Tuesday will be another cruising webinar. All right, you guys, have a great evening.